Hello fellow humans, today we are going to be working on the farmer's house. I took this house in the village to be the farmer's house because it had that wheat planted outside, and I went straight to work making sure to tear it down. It's a cute little house, but I'm not even going to leave this one in its original location, and I'm definitely going to end up going a lot bigger. Slightly bigger than I originally intended. So I start out by tearing down the structure, choosing the blocks from it to go ahead and get me started with my block palette. I then patch up those holes and give myself a new location to work. I have to add a new path because I want this farmer's house to be kind of on the outskirts of town, or at least the side of town, and the only way to do that was to kind of bend the path some in order to be able to get it to work with the amount of land I had. I then start laying out my wall outline, and this is where it definitely starts getting bigger. I even have to move my block palette out of the way. So you will see that this outline has several sections. On the front there, that's going to end up being a small little front porch, because any good farmhouse really does have a very nice front porch. Then besides that, it's going to be an L-shaped house with a little nook at the front and the larger long great room. I build up the walls by trimming it in this oak log. I find that for the houses in the village, it was a very traditional block for me to go ahead and use, and with keeping these with the original design, I end up trying to use that same structure of outlining the walls with that oak log that the village does originally. Several times throughout this, I do have to go back in and kind of expand the land around me because I'm just so close to the edge, and that's just not the style I'm looking for. So by putting these wall pieces in, I'm not going to necessarily keep them here the whole time, but it does give me a good idea of the general way the build is going to feel before I'm done with it. Now I'm going to go ahead and start outlining my roof in that same way, only placing the edge blocks so that I get an idea of what the shape's going to feel like without having to build the whole thing and tear it down later. So I think I'm going to opt for that pitch in the front and then on the sides, so it creates, once again, mimicking that L shape. And so you see here I'm seeing how it will join up. Right now I'm not super thinking about the front porch because you'll notice it's not included in the roof, but it is going to end up being there eventually, and it does tie into the same roof line. So I extend out my back section of roof, and what I end up noticing is that it's going to work a lot better to tie it into this front section if I go ahead and shift that wall out by one block. So I go ahead and move that forward one so that I can continue building out my roof. I use a little bit of World Edit just to make this a little faster, but Minecraft, anything you build just about, you can go ahead and take down. So it's perfectly reasonable to just break those blocks by hand. I just wanted to speed up this process because this is turning into a very large house. Now I do consider, as part of my roof, adding this little dormer on the front, and it would have been super cute, but I just wasn't feeling it at the time. The house is already really big, and that would have made the house even larger. So this roof is going to be trimmed in stone brick. Then I'm going to build the bulk of the roof out of the deep slate bricks. I do, before the screenshots, go in and texture the roof, but because I've done that in so many of my remodels before, I did opt to go ahead and skip that for this one. I'm just gonna, at the end, throw in some blocks like the deep slate tile and the regular deep slate, just to give it some variance so that it's not just this brick texture all the way across. I believe I also throw in some stone stairs to the edges of the roof as well to add in some texture there. I think the back of this roof could also have a lot of interest going on if I had thought about putting a dormer back here. However, it's the back of a roof. Those, even in real life, aren't super interesting. Now, on the back of the house, I am going to add a small little chimney going up. I just think a farmhouse definitely needs a good fireplace, and the only way to have a fireplace make sense and be practical is to go ahead and add in the chimney. So you'll see that sticking up the back here. Now I can go ahead and think about switching out the gray wool at the bottom for this cobblestone and filling in my walls. I am going to opt for just the classic oak for this, like so many of the other buildings in the village. I think shortly I need to make one that has stone or cobblestone walls, because that is a very original village design that I haven't used yet. However, for this one, I am going to stick with the just traditional oak planks. And like some of the others, I'm going to mix that up by adding the stripped oak later, just to kind of break it up. Because this house is so big, it definitely takes a considerable chunk of time to fill in these walls. When I look at this, this feels very large. It's got super tall upstairs in addition to the downstairs. So I'm going to go ahead and shift that roof down by 1 block. That also does remove that center oak log that I had going on. And right now I'm going to leave it gone. I think I do go ahead and add it back later. I take this opportunity now that my walls are kind of filled in to begin working on my front porch. So I added that railing with the 3 gates side by side, and then I went to add the roof, which is just going to be a nice little sloping roof to meet up with the other section. So it has just a very simple design that just kind of sections that section off and creates a cozy, inviting little front porch. The stairs aren't centered to give it some more visual interest, and now you see I'm going in and doing exactly what I said I was going to do with the walls, and swapping some of that oak plank out for some stripped oak. I'm also going to add these trapdoors around the cobblestone at the bottom. So the cobblestone color is very different from the oak of the rest of the house. So by adding in that trapdoors, it kind of starts to bring it together by adding a similar color to it. However, you can still see the cobblestone underneath, which gives this idea of a really strong foundation to the build. So now that I've got these stripped logs in, you can kind of see where the first floor is and where the second floor is. And I do go ahead and decide to add in that oak log again. I even leave it as that vertical section in the upper part of the roof. It looks like some very strong structural features. And any good build is going to have those structural parts. And so adding these to this design also creates some visual interest that makes the house look more developed, even though I'm working with a very limited block palette and it's not a huge build. So I do debate taking out the center post, especially for this window. Now, me and these windows, I don't know. I wanted a nice window box, but with the size of this build, it just wasn't working. I find that traditionally you need a much larger build in order to be able to make a window box like this work. So even with trying all the different options of what was going to be the material in the window box, what was going to be the material for the windows, it just didn't work out. So I go back to my tried and true windows of the stairs and the glass panes, starting out with the birch and ultimately swapping it back out for oak stairs. So on the inside of the house, it's going to create this weird checkerboard type thing in a couple places where you have the stripped oak and the oak plank texture. So I add those windows in, and right now I have that big front window. I figured that would be a great place to put a dining room on the inside. I ultimately do not put a dining room, and it looked too much like a face. So when I had the 2 small windows up at the top and the 2 small windows at the bottom, it just looked too much like a face to me. So I just kind of swapped it out for just the 2 on top, 2 on bottom. Now what I'm doing here is I'm adding some upside down stairs just to create a little more depth with that bottom section before adding some decorations to my front porch. So that's a potted plant on either side and adding those stairs so you can actually get up here, and then a small bench. So the bench is just 2 campfires that I extinguished with trapdoors on either side. And now with the final touches on the porch out front, it is time to go ahead and head inside. On the inside of the house, I'm going to start out with my super traditional oak floors. Definitely a lot of oak in this build, but with the limited block palette of a village, I really didn't have a lot to work with. There's not like a spruce wood that makes a really good flooring or dark oak to give some contrast with the lighter oak. So I go ahead and build in this cute little fireplace using the glass as a little surround, lighting the block on fire and including a lantern. Then I go ahead and work on some furniture of just a couple couches and chairs just to make this feel like a cute little living room. I even go ahead and add a cute little carpet rug, and brown was definitely not the choice. So I do opt for this yellow, which is a lot, but it works with the space. The village flowers you traditionally see are the poppies and the dandelions, so they have those colors mimicked there. Now I'm working on a little dining room area. I use granite as the chairs if I wasn't sticking to a limited block palette. I really do prefer things like nether brick and copper and blocks like prismarine maybe, things that have a lot of color as my chairs. So the closest I could get with the blocks that I could find local to this Plains village would be the granite. right? It's definitely a choice block, but it works in the space and it's something different from the oak. Now I'm going to be working on the front bedroom. So this house has 2 small bedrooms, one downstairs, which is the red bedroom, which is just a single room. I figured it would be for the older child, so it had a little desk area and even like books, like maybe a writer, something along those lines. There's also going to be another children's room upstairs, or just a second bedroom. I say children's room because that's just kind of the idea for the family I have in my head that lives here. And then there's also going to be the adults room upstairs that's a very large space. So they have a very large room and the others have a very small room. But yes, this house will ultimately sleep a good many people. Now I go back into the main room to go ahead and start adding in the kitchen. I love using looms for cabinets, empty bookshelves, anything like that, just because they look like they have drawers that could pull out, or they look like maybe empty shelves. It's a great texture on the side of those. So I use that as my upper cabinets as well, and I've even put in a range hood. I think about doing some open shelving with some trap doors. They're just so hard to get to work because you have to have them set the whole full block down. Now we're going to make a cute little desk area. I want to use some bookshelves in here, just something to kind of finish off the space. So bookshelves on either side, lantern in the middle, done. Now moving upstairs, we're going to add in our walls to section this out into our 3 rooms. We're going to do the same thing that we did on the walls outside that we do on these walls inside, adding in that stripped oak along the bottom as we separate this space. So the room that's currently very dark that I haven't finished filling in is going to be the master suite of the house, and this other tiny room off to the side is going to mimic the one downstairs. There are parts of this where you can see the roof. Some of it I cover with trap doors, some of it I don't. I didn't add windows to this side of the house originally, so now that I'm going to put a room over there, I definitely want to consider adding some windows. So this is the second little bedroom. It's going to end up getting some cute little bright yellow bunk beds, once again mimicking that red and yellow color scheme that I've had in a lot of the rooms, and it gets a little like shelving area over here. Now this little seating area upstairs I figured would be a great office nook type of place. I don't know, I added several bookshelves in this little like desk area over here. I ultimately put up like some paintings. There's a little tree, potted plant. I don't know why I said tree. That's an interesting way of phrasing it. But yeah, so we have that space there. Then we have the master bedroom, which I keep very light and open, using some light blue carpet with the white bed. It looks very regal. Yeah, you can see the fireplace on the outside, but it's just, they made the most of their space in this house. On this other side, I'm making this kind of vanity wardrobe area. I know that the barrels are not all facing the same direction on the upstairs, but even though you won't see it here, I do ultimately cover those up with trapdoors. I'm also going to create a banner here that is made to look like a mirror. So you can definitely look up any of those designs. It's just using a couple fades and the slash to create this like mirror look. So I use it both as a standing mirror and as a little mirror tucked in this vanity area. This room gets a little couch and a rug before I head on outside to do some final landscaping. Scattering around some leaves, bone mealing the ground, getting some flowers and some grass. I break a lot of the tall grass just because it seems like a lot, and I add that little bit of a pathway up to the house just to make it feel a little more complete. Now that the outside has a little bit more to it, I go ahead and add a chimney. I use double trapdoors for this one to really stretch the chimney up tall because the house is so big the chimney needs just a little more oomph to it to make it belong. So as we move into these screenshots, I really hope you enjoyed today's build, and be sure to like and comment and let me know what you want me to build next. But until next time, goodbye!